Welcome back to Z Coins. What if I told you that a simple penny in your pocket could be worth hundreds of thousands, even millions? Stick around, because today we're diving into the top 9 most valuable Lincoln pennies ever discovered. You might just have one hiding in your change jar. Coin collectors and treasure hunters, today we are diving into the fascinating world of the 1973 Abraham Lincoln 1-cent penny coin. This little copper coin might just be sitting in your pocket or your piggy bank, but did you know it could be worth a whole lot more than just a single cent? Stick around, because in this video we will cover everything from the history of this coin, the rare varieties, errors that could make it worth thousands, and what it sells for in today's market. So grab a snack and let us explore the hidden value of the 1973 Lincoln penny. First, let's talk about the basics. The Lincoln 1-cent penny from 1973 features the familiar portrait of President Abraham Lincoln facing to the right on the obverse side of the coin. This design, by Victor David Brenner, has been used since 1909, when the coin was introduced to celebrate the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. On the reverse side, we have the Lincoln Memorial, which was added in 1959, replacing the wheat ears design. The coin is made of 95% copper and 5% zinc, giving it that rich reddish-brown tone that older pennies are known for. Now on to mintage. In 1973, the United States Mint produced the Lincoln penny in 3 different facilities: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Philadelphia struck over 3.5 billion pennies. Denver produced around 3.5 billion as well, and San Francisco minted about 319 million proof coins. That is right, billions with a B. With numbers like that, you might be wondering, how can this penny be rare or valuable? Well, here is the catch. It is not just about how many were made, but about condition, rarity, and most importantly, errors. Let us start with condition. If you have a 1973 Lincoln penny that has never been circulated, meaning it is in pristine condition with no scratches or marks, it could be worth much more to collectors. Coins graded by professional services like PCGS or NGC as MS65 or higher can fetch anywhere from $10 to $100 depending on the grade and market demand. Now let us talk about errors and varieties. This is where things get exciting. Some 1973 pennies were struck off center, others have double dies, especially on the date or the word liberty. These types of errors are extremely collectible and can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars. For example, a 1973 D penny with a major off center strike sold for over $250 at auction. Another 1973 penny with strong doubling on the obverse was graded MS66 red and sold for over $500, but the holy grail among 1973 Lincoln pennies is the proof coins from San Francisco. The 1973 S proof penny, if found with a deep cameo finish and graded PR70 by PCGS, can sell for well over $1,000. That is a serious return on a 1-cent investment. Collectors look for sharp mirrored surfaces, strong contrast, and flawless finish. And what about the current market value? Most circulated 1973 Lincoln pennies are still only worth face value, but even in average condition, if you find one with a unique tone or minor error, it could sell for $5 to $20 to the right buyer. Copper value also plays a small role. Since the coin is 95% copper, it is technically worth more than 1 cent just in metal. As of today, the melt value of the copper in a 1973 penny is around 2 to 3 cents depending on copper prices, but melting pennies is illegal, so the value stays in the collectability. So how do you know if your 1973 penny is valuable? Here is what to look for. Check the mint mark. If it is AD, it was made in Denver. If it has an S, it is a proof from San Francisco. No mint mark means it was made in Philadelphia. Next, check for doubling, especially on the date and liberty. Use a magnifying glass to inspect any odd details. Also check for off-center strikes, die cracks, or unusual shapes. And lastly, check the condition. Red uncirculated coins with no wear are more valuable than brown circulated ones. If you think you have a special one, consider sending it to PCGS or NGC for grading. So, to sum it up, the 1973 Abraham Lincoln penny might be common in number but rare in treasure. With the right combination of mint mark, error, and condition, your penny could be worth a lot more than 1 cent. Collectors are always searching for high-grade examples and unique errors. And with copper values rising, older pennies like these are only becoming more interesting to hold on. Tozo before you spend that penny or toss it in the change jar. Take a closer look. You never know what kind of history or hidden value you might be holding in your hand. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful or interesting, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos on coin values, history, and rare finds. And let us know in the comments if you have a 1973 penny in your collection, or if you have ever found a valuable coin in your change. We've got something really exciting to talk about, especially if you've ever looked at your spare change and wondered if you were holding on to something rare or valuable, because believe it or not, some of the most valuable coins in the world aren't always silver or gold. Sometimes they're just copper pennies sitting in your pocket. And today we're going deep into the story of the 1974 Lincoln 1-cent coin, a penny that at first glance might look ordinary, but in some cases it can be worth a fortune. So make sure to watch all the way through so you don't miss the key details that could turn your loose change into cold hard cash. So let's start with the basics. The 1974 Lincoln penny features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front, that's the obverse, and on the reverse is the classic Lincoln memorial design, which had been in use since 1959. Now most of these pennies were made from copper, but here's where things get interesting, because in 1974 the US Mint was experimenting with different metals, and that created some very rare varieties that collectors are desperately hunting for today. You see, back in the early 1970s, the rising cost of copper meant it was becoming more expensive to make pennies than they were actually worth. So in 1974, the mint tried producing some test coins using aluminum. Yes, you heard that right, aluminum pennies, and they made over 1 million of them at first, planning to release them into circulation. But here's the twist: most of them were later melted down and destroyed before they ever reached the public. Only a few survived, and today they are considered among the rarest and most valuable modern US coins. But wait, we're talking about 1974 copper pennies too. So what makes a regular copper penny special? Well, aside from the experimental aluminum sense, there were also a few mistakes and variations that happened during minting, and those errors are where the real money lies. For example, some 1974 pennies have double dies, which means the design was stamped twice, slightly out of alignment. This kind of error can make a penny worth anywhere from $50 to several hundred, depending on the condition and the visibility of the doubling. Another big factor in value is whether the coin was minted in Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco. You'll know by looking under the year on the coin, where it might say a little D or S for Denver or San Francisco, respectively. Coins from San Francisco, especially proof coins, meaning they were specially struck for collectors and not for general circulation, tend to be more valuable, particularly if they've been kept in pristine condition over the years. Now let's talk about market value, because this is what everyone really wants to know. How much is my 1974 penny worth? Well, the truth is, if it's a regular worn copper penny from 1974, it's probably worth just face value, which is 1 cent, maybe a couple cents, to a collector if it's in great shape. But if you've got one of the rare aluminum versions or a known error coins such as a double die or off-center strike, now you're talking serious money. There have been reports of aluminum 1974 pennies being valued at over $200,000, although owning one can get legally tricky since the mint considers them government property. Even for non-aluminum error pennies, values can range from $20 to over $1,000, especially if graded and certified by a professional coin grading company like PCGS or NGC. Coins in mint state condition, particularly MS65 or higher, can command serious premiums at auctions and online marketplaces, and believe it or not, some collectors are paying top dollar just to complete their sets with every known variety and mint mark. So what should you do if you have a 1974 penny lying around? The first thing is, don't spend it, not until you've taken a closer look. Grab a magnifying glass, check the coin carefully, look for any doubling errors, look at the mint mark, and most importantly, consider having it graded if it looks especially clean and uncirculated, because having that official certification can boost its value dramatically and give buyers confidence. And finally, let's do a quick recap to wrap this up. 1974 Lincoln pennies are generally common, but some varieties like the aluminum test coins and double die errors can be extremely valuable. Regular copper pennies from this year are still worth checking, especially if they're in high grade or have unusual features, and if you're lucky enough to find one of those rare aluminum versions, you could be sitting on a six-figure treasure. All right, everyone, that's going to do it for today's video. If you found this interesting or helpful, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more rare coin videos just like this one. And if you've got a 1974 penny or any other rare coins you want to know about, drop a comment down below. And we're diving deep into the story of the 1978 D Lincoln penny. That tiny 1-cent coin you might have rattling around in a jar somewhere could be worth far more than its face value. So grab your magnifying glasses, because we're about to explore why this unassuming coin might be a hidden treasure. First things first, let's talk about the design. The Lincoln penny has a rich legacy. It was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln, making it the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical figure instead of the traditional Lady Liberty. This marked a turning point in U.S. coinage history. The front or obverse of the coin features a right-facing portrait of Abraham Lincoln sculpted by Victor David Brenner. His initials can be found under Lincoln's shoulder, but we'll get back to that in a moment. On the reverse, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, which was added in 1959, replacing the earlier wheat ears design. This reverse was designed by Frank Gasparo, and it remained in use until 2008. Now let's zoom in on the 1978 D Lincoln penny. The D mint mark stands for the Denver Mint, which struck over 4.2 billion of these coins in 1978. That's right, over 4 billion. It might sound like a lot, and it is, which is why most 1978 D pennies you find will only be worth face value, especially if they are heavily circulated. However, certain coins from this mintage can command a much higher price due to their condition, errors, and rarity in pristine form. If you happen to have a 1978 D Lincoln penny in uncirculated condition, or better yet, a coin graded MS-65 or above by a professional grading service such as PCGS or NGC, you could be looking at a value of $10 to $50, and in some cases even more so. What makes a 1978 D penny worth collecting? Let's go over some key factors. First is condition. The value of a coin increases dramatically with its grade. For example, a penny with a grade of MS-67 red is extremely rare and sought after by collectors. The red designation means the coin retains its original bright copper luster without significant discoloration. These coins can fetch over $100 at auction. Second is errors and varieties. While the 1978 D penny is not known for any major die varieties like double dies or repunched mint marks, there are minor errors that can make a big difference. Look out for off-center strikes, die cracks, cut breaks, or coins struck on the wrong planchet. For instance, if you discover a 1978 D penny that was accidentally struck on a dime planchet, it could be worth hundreds. Third is eye appeal and toning. Some collectors love beautifully toned coins, especially those with rainbow hues or unusual color patterns. Although toning doesn't always add value, it can make your coin more attractive to a niche group of collectors. Let's break down some recent market activity. A high-grade 1978 D penny graded MS-67 red by PCGS recently sold for over $200. That's quite the return for a coin that once cost just a single cent. Even mid-range examples in MS-65 can sell for $15 to $25 depending on market demand. And what about proof coins or special editions? You might be wondering if there's a proof version of the 1978 D. There isn't. Proof coins were minted in San Francisco and marked with an S mint mark, so any 1978 D penny is a regular business strike, not a proof one. Thing to remember is that copper prices also play a role in the value of older pennies. The 1978 D Lincoln penny is composed of 95% copper and 5% zinc. Unlike modern pennies, which are mostly zinc, this older composition gives them a melt value of around 2 to 3 cents, depending on copper prices. However, melting pennies for their metal content is illegal in the United States, so don't plan on cashing in that way. So let's sum it all up. The 1978 D Lincoln penny is common in circulation, but certain examples in high grade or with mint errors can be worth significantly more than face value. If you have a coin in brilliant uncirculated condition or something with a visible mint error, it's definitely worth getting it checked out by a professional grading service. Always handle your coins with care, preferably by the edges, and avoid cleaning them. Cleaning can lower a coin's grade and decrease its value dramatically. Use a magnifier or loupe to examine your coins closely, and consider starting a coin album or storage box to safely organize your finds. Before we wrap up, here's a quick fun fact. The Lincoln cent is the longest-running design in U.S. coinage history, spanning over a century, and it's still going strong today. From wheat ears to the Lincoln Memorial, and now to the Union Shield, it's a coin that carries history in your pocket. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed learning about the 1978 D Lincoln penny, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into coins, currency, and hidden treasures. Leave a comment below. We're diving into something every collector and coin enthusiast should know about. We're talking about the 1980 Lincoln 1-cent penny. Now, you might be thinking it's just a regular penny, right? Nothing special there, but hold up, because some of these seemingly ordinary coins could be worth way more than just 1 cent. In fact, in certain cases, the 1980 penny can be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars, depending on a few important details. So sit back, relax, and let's take a deep dive into the history, the design, the value, and what makes the 1980 penny possibly worth a lot of money today. Let's start with a little history. The Lincoln penny has been around for quite a while. Introduced in 1909 to celebrate Abraham Lincoln's 100th birthday, it became the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical person. Before that, U.S. coins used symbols like Lady Liberty or eagles, but not real presidents. The 1980 penny was part of the Lincoln Memorial series, which ran from 1959 to 2008. On the front, also called the obverse, we have the familiar portrait of President Abraham Lincoln facing right. This design was done by Victor David Brenner, and it's remained mostly unchanged for over a century. On the back or reverse of the coin, you'll see the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. This reverse design was introduced in 1959 and created by Frank Gasparo. It was meant to honor Lincoln's contributions and his legacy as one of the greatest American presidents. Now, what makes the 1980 penny special? Well, several things. First, let's talk mintage. In 1980, the U.S. Mint struck over 7 billion pennies. That's billion with a B. Philadelphia minted over 7.4 billion. Denver minted over 5.1 billion. And San Francisco produced a much smaller number, mostly for proof sets. So yes, these coins were made in huge numbers, which might make you think they're not rare, but the real value comes from condition, mint mark errors, and striking varieties. Let's break that down. First up, we have mint marks. If you look below the date on a penny, you'll often see a small letter A. 1980 penny with no mint mark means it was made in Philadelphia. A. D. means it was made in Denver, and S. means it was made in San Francisco, and those are usually proof coins. Now let's talk about errors. This is where it gets interesting. Some 1980 pennies have what's called a double die error. This means the coin was struck twice by the die slightly out of alignment, which causes doubling on the letters or numbers. For example, you might see doubling on the word liberty or on the date itself. Collectors love these kinds of errors, and they can drastically raise the value of the coin. A strong double die penny from 1980 can fetch hundreds of dollars depending on condition. Another thing to look for is off-center strikes. This happens when the coin isn't properly centered in the press and comes out partially blank on one side. The more off-center the strike, the more it's typically worth. These types of mint errors can go for anywhere between $50 and $300 or more. Then you have coins with die cracks, cut breaks, or misaligned dies. Each of these errors gives the coin uniqueness and increases collector demand. Let's not forget the importance of condition. Coins are graded on a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 being a perfect coin without any scratches, wear, or damage. A 1980 penny in average circulated condition is usually just worth face value, but if you have a penny in uncirculated condition, or even better, a proof coin from a proof set, it can be worth a few dollars or much more, especially if it's been professionally graded by services like PCGS or NGC. Now, here's the question everyone wants answered. How much is a 1980 penny worth today? If you have a regular circulated 1980 penny from Philadelphia or Denver, it's usually worth 1 cent, maybe up to 5 cents if it's in decent shape. If it's in mint state condition, it can sell for $1 to $5 or sometimes more. A really high-grade MS-67 or better can fetch $20 to $50, and even more if it's a rare variety-proof. Pennies from San Francisco typically sell for $1 to $10 depending on the grade. Now, if you have one of those error pennies like a double die or off-center strike, the value jumps significantly. Some high-grade double die 1980 pennies have sold for over $500 at auction, and the rarest and most valuable ones with multiple striking errors have sold for over $1,000. So what should you do if you have a 1980 penny? First, don't spend it right away. Check for a mint mark. Look for any signs of doubling or errors and examine the condition. If you think it might be rare or high quality, consider getting it appraised or sending it in for grading. You never know, that little copper coin in your pocket change could be worth a small fortune. And one final tip, always store valuable coins properly. Keep them in a protective sleeve or a coin holder to prevent scratches and wear, and avoid cleaning them because that can lower their value. So there you have it, the story of the 1980 Lincoln penny, a coin that might seem common but with the right details can be surprisingly valuable. Make sure to check your change, your piggy bank, and even those old coin jars, because treasure might just be hiding in plain sight. We dive deep into the world of coins, collectibles, and hidden treasures. Today, we are unlocking the story of one of the most iconic coins in American history, the 1981 Abraham Lincoln 1-cent penny. You might think it is just pocket change, but the truth is, some of these pennies are worth way more than 1 cent. In fact, some are worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars if you know what to look for. So stick around, because in this video we are going to break down the history of the 1981 penny, the changes that were happening at the US Mint around that time, the rare and valuable varieties you need to know about, and of course, the current market value of these coins in 2025. Let's start with a little bit of history. The Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. It was the first American coin to feature a real person, and that decision caused quite a stir at the time. The coin was designed by Victor David Brenner, whose initials VDB were briefly visible on the reverse side in the first year of production before being removed and later restored in a less prominent spot. Fast forward to 1981, we are now looking at a coin that still carries Lincoln's portrait on the obverse or front, but some big changes were brewing. The penny in 1981 was still being made mostly of copper, about 95% copper and 5% zinc. This composition had been standard for decades. However, due to rising copper prices, the United States Mint was preparing to change the composition to a much cheaper zinc core with a thin copper coating. That change officially happened in 1982, but 1981 was the last full year of the traditional copper penny. That alone makes it an interesting year for collectors because it represents the end of an era. Now, let's talk about mint marks and varieties. In 1981, pennies were struck at 3 different mints: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. The ones from Philadelphia have no mint mark. Those from Denver have a small D under the date. And the San Francisco coins have an S. However, the coins from San Francisco in 1981 were not made for circulation. They were only included in proof sets. Here's where it gets interesting. There are 2 major varieties of the 1981 S-proof penny, known as Type 1 and Type 2. These types refer to differences in how the S-mint mark appears. The Type 1 has a more blurry and filled-in S, while the Type 2 has a clearer, sharper S with more defined serifs. The Type 2 variety is much rarer and therefore much more valuable. So if you have a 1981 S-proof penny, take a close look at that mint mark. It could be a Type 2 and worth a surprising amount of money. But what about the regular pennies from 1981? Most of them are only worth face value if they have been circulated. But uncirculated examples, especially those graded MS-65 or higher by professional grading services, can fetch between $1 and $5 depending on quality. That might not sound like a lot, but it is still several 100% more than face value. Now let's talk about errors, the real jackpot for collectors. There are a number of error coins from 1981 that can be worth serious money. Some of these include off-center strikes, double die obverse, and broad strikes. A 1981 penny with a strong double die error on Lincoln's face or the lettering can easily sell for over $100. If the error is dramatic enough, it might go for several hundred or even into the thousands at auction. So how do you know if you have one of these valuable coins? The best way is to inspect your pennies carefully with a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe. Look for anything unusual, doubled letters, misaligned edges, missing details, or any odd features. If something looks off, it might be an error, and that could mean money. Now let's talk about today's market. As of 2025, the value of a 1981 penny depends on three main things: the mint mark, the condition, and whether it is a rare variety or has an error. A standard 1981 D or 1981 no mint mark penny in average circulated condition is still only worth about 1 cent. But if it is uncirculated, it can be worth between $1 and $3. Proof coins from San Francisco in pristine condition are worth between $5 and $15 for Type 1, and between $20 and $50 for the Type 2 variety. In high grades, especially graded PR69 DCAM or PR70 DCAM, the 1981 S-Type 2 penny can reach values over $150. Error coins, as mentioned earlier, are in a different category altogether. Off-center errors, double dies, or clipped planchets from 1981 can easily bring in $50 to $500, depending on how dramatic the error is and how rare the example is. And finally, copper content still matters. Since the 1981 penny is made mostly of copper, it technically has a melt value of around 2 to 3 cents depending on copper prices. However, it is illegal to melt US pennies for their metal content, so that value only applies in theory. Alright, let's wrap it up. The 1981 Lincoln penny might look ordinary, but it is actually a window into a changing era for American coinage. Between the transition from copper to zinc, the proof varieties, the collectible errors, and the historical context, there's a lot more to this little coin than meets the EY. So next time you are going through your pocket change or coin jar, pay attention. That ordinary-looking penny from 1981 could be a hidden gem worth far more than just 1 cent if you enjoyed this deep dive. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you do not miss any future videos about coin collecting, rare finds, and numismatic news. We're diving into the fascinating world of coin collecting, and more specifically, we're going to take a closer look at the 1982 Abraham Lincoln 1-cent penny coin. This particular penny has a significant place in both history and the world of numismatics, and you'll be amazed to learn how its value has evolved over time and what it's worth in today's market. So, whether you're a seasoned coin collector or just getting into the hobby, this video is for you. First, let's talk about the history of the 1982 penny. The US 1-cent coin has been in circulation since 1793, and over the years, it has undergone numerous changes in design. However, one of the most notable changes occurred in 1909, when the U.S. Mint introduced the image of Abraham Lincoln on the penny to commemorate the 100th anniversary of his birth. Designed by sculptor Victor David Brenner, this design was the first to feature a president on a U.S. coin. The Lincoln penny, as it's now called, has become one of the most iconic coins in American history. The design of the 1982 penny is significant for a few reasons. For starters, this coin marks the last year the U.S. Mint struck pennies primarily made of 95% copper. Starting in 1982, due to rising copper prices, the Mint began producing pennies with a composition of 97.5% zinc and only 2.5% copper. But the 1982 coin was transitional, meaning that both the copper and zinc versions were produced that year. This is one of the main reasons why the 1982 penny is so interesting to collectors. If you're lucky enough to find a copper version of the 1982 penny, it could be worth more than a typical penny due to its higher metal content. Let's dive a bit deeper into how to distinguish between the two different types of 1982 pennies. First, there are two different weights for the coins from this year. The copper pennies weigh about 3.11 grams, while the zinc pennies weigh only 2.5 grams. So, how can you tell which one you have? It's actually pretty simple. If you have a scale that measures in grams, you can weigh the coin and determine whether it's copper or zinc. However, if you don't have a scale handy, there are other clues. For example, the copper penny will have a more reddish tone, while the zinc penny is generally more of a dull brownish color. Now that we know the difference between the two types of 1982 pennies, let's talk about the value of the 1982 Abraham Lincoln penny. First, it's important to note that most 1982 pennies are worth only 1 cent, just like any other penny you might come across in your pocket change. However, the value of certain 1982 pennies can be much higher depending on a few key factors. Let's start with the copper version of the 1982 penny. As I mentioned earlier, these coins are made of 95% copper, and given the price of copper, their metal content alone can make them worth more than a typical penny. In fact, the copper in each of these pennies is worth more than 1 cent, meaning that if you find a copper 1982 penny in your collection, its scrap metal value is worth more than face value. The exact worth of the copper penny depends on the current price of copper, which fluctuates. As of recent market conditions, copper prices have been around $3 to $4 per pound. A single copper penny weighs about 3.11 grams, which means that its copper content is worth around 2 to 3 cents at current market prices. This can vary slightly depending on fluctuations in copper prices. Next, let's talk about the 1982 zinc pennies. These pennies are made of 97.5% zinc, and they are much more common than the copper version. As such, they tend to be worth only their face value, which is 1 cent. However, if you have a particularly well-preserved or uncirculated 1982 zinc penny, it could still hold some value to collectors. Coins in excellent condition can sometimes fetch a premium, especially if they've been kept in mint condition or have unique characteristics that make them stand out. In general, though, most zinc 1982 pennies will only be worth a small premium above their face value, typically ranging from 2 to 5 cents. When it comes to rarer varieties of the 1982 penny, there are a few factors that could significantly increase its value. For example, if you have a 1982 penny with a unique error or minting mistake, such as a double die or a mistruck coin, it could be worth a lot more. Mint errors are highly sought after by collectors, and they can greatly increase the value of a coin. These types of errors, although rare, can be found in both copper and zinc versions of the 1982 penny, and they can range in value from a few dollars to hundreds or even thousands of dollars, depending on the severity and rarity of the error. So, what are the current market values for the 1982 Abraham Lincoln penny? Well, it really depends on the type of penny, its condition, and whether it has any unique characteristics. For example, a regular 1982 zinc penny in average circulated condition is worth only about 1 cent, just like any other penny. However, a well-preserved uncirculated zinc penny could fetch anywhere from 5 to 10 cents, and possibly even more if it's in pristine condition. The copper 1982 penny, on the other hand, can be worth a bit more due to its metal content. At current copper prices, the copper version of the 1982 penny can be worth around 2 to 3 cents based on the scrap value of the metal alone. However, a copper penny in mint condition or one with a unique error could be worth much more, potentially even hundreds of dollars. For a 1982 penny with a notable mint error, the price can vary dramatically. For example, a 1982 penny with a double die error could fetch upwards of $100 or more, depending on the quality of the error and the coin's overall condition. The rarer the error, the more valuable the coin becomes. If you have a 1982 penny, or any other coin for that matter, it's always a good idea to have it appraised by a professional numismatist or coin dealer. They can give you a more accurate estimate of its value, based on factors such as rarity, condition, and current market demand. In conclusion, while most 1982 1-cent pennies are worth just 1 cent, there are certain factors that can make them more valuable. The copper version of the 1982 penny, due to its higher metal content, has a scrap value that exceeds its face value. Meanwhile, certain 1982 pennies with minting errors or in pristine condition can be worth far more than their original face value. Whether you're a casual collector or a serious numismatist, the 1982 Abraham Lincoln penny is a coin that holds both historical significance and potential financial value. So, the next time you find one of these pennies in your change, take a closer look, you might just have a hidden gem on your hands. We'll dive into the fascinating world of the Abraham Lincoln 1985 1-cent penny coin. If you're a coin collector or simply curious about the value and history behind this specific penny, you've come to the right place. Today, we'll explore everything from its history to how much it's worth today and what factors can affect its value in the current market. The Abraham Lincoln 1985 1-cent penny, like all pennies, was minted by the United States government, but it holds a unique place in American coinage history due to its design, its age, and the history behind its creation. The 1985 penny features a portrait of Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, which has been the standard design for the 1-cent coin since 1909. The image of Lincoln, created by sculptor Victor David Brenner, was first introduced to celebrate the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. This design has endured for over a century, making it one of the most iconic and recognizable designs in U.S. coinage. The 1985 penny itself is composed of 95% copper and 5% zinc, which was the standard composition for pennies minted before 1982. In 1982, the U.S. Mint shifted to a copper-plated zinc composition for pennies due to the rising cost of copper. The 1985 penny, with its copper content, is often more sought after by collectors, especially those who focus on the weight and metal content of older pennies. While the face value of a 1985 penny is, of course, just 1 cent, the real value comes from factors like its condition, rarity, and any potential errors that may have occurred during the minting process. So, how much is the 1985 Abraham Lincoln penny worth today? The value of this penny can vary greatly depending on several factors. For a standard 1985 penny in average circulated condition, you might only get its face value, which is 1 cent. However, if the penny is in mint condition, it can be worth more. A coin that is in uncirculated or proof-like condition might fetch anywhere from 10 to 50 cents on the open market. Some collectors might even be willing to pay more for a penny that has been graded as near perfect by professional grading companies like PCGS or NGC. Now, let's talk about the rarer 1985 penny varieties. While the 1985 penny itself is not considered rare, there are certain characteristics that can make specific coins more valuable. For example, there are known instances of 1985 pennies that have been struck with errors, such as double strikes or off-center minting. These error coins are more valuable because they are unique or unusual. For collectors looking to find these rarities, even a small flaw or error can significantly increase a coin's market value. Some 1985 pennies with errors have been known to sell for upwards of $10 or more, depending on the type of error and the condition of the coin. Another factor that can influence the value of the 1985 penny is its demand among collectors. Coin collectors are always on the lookout for pennies in great condition or with rare and unique features. The appeal of the Abraham Lincoln penny, particularly the 1985 version, is enhanced by its historical significance, the connection to Abraham Lincoln, and the fact that it's part of a long-running series of coins that have been in circulation for over a century. When it comes to finding the value of your 1985 penny, one of the best ways to get an accurate estimate is by consulting a professional coin grading service. These services assess the condition of the coin and assign it a grade, which can affect its market price. Coins are graded on a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 being a perfect coin in mint condition. If you have a 1985 penny that you believe is in excellent condition, having it graded by a professional can give you an idea of its true value. Keep in mind that even slight wear and tear can lower the value of a coin, while a coin in pristine condition can command a higher price. Now let's discuss some of the other factors that can affect the market value of the 1985 penny. First, the price of copper plays a role in determining the value of older pennies, including the 1985 1-cent coin. Since the 1985 penny is made of 95% copper, its metal content could potentially make it worth more than its face value, especially if the price of copper rises. During periods when copper prices are high, collectors and investors might be more interested in purchasing older copper pennies, including the 1985 version, as a way to invest in the metal itself. However, it's important to note that the U.S. Mint has not allowed people to melt down pennies for their copper content since 2006, which can limit the potential for profit from this aspect. Another factor that can influence the value of the 1985 penny is the overall state of the coin market. Like all collectibles, the value of coins can fluctuate based on market trends, demand, and the general economy. For example, during times of economic uncertainty, investors may turn to tangible assets like coins as a way to preserve wealth, which can drive up demand and, consequently, the value of certain coins. On the other hand, during times of economic prosperity, demand for coins may decrease, and their value might stabilize or decline. For collectors who are interested in investing in the 1985 Abraham Lincoln penny, it's essential to consider the long-term potential of the coin. While it's unlikely that the 1985 penny will ever be worth a substantial amount of money like some of the rarer and more famous U.S. coins, it could still appreciate over time, particularly if it's well-maintained and remains in good condition. Additionally, as the years go by and fewer 1985 pennies remain in circulation, the rarity of these coins could increase, which may drive up their value in the future. In summary, while the 1985 Abraham Lincoln penny may not be worth a fortune, its value can vary depending on its condition, any errors it might contain, and its appeal to collectors. A penny in average condition will likely be worth just 1 cent, while a coin in excellent or mint condition could be worth more. Error coins, in particular, can command higher prices among collectors, with some even selling for tens of dollars. If you're looking to find out what your 1985 penny is worth, consider having it professionally graded, as this can give you a better understanding of its market value. And remember, like all collectibles, the value of the 1985 penny can fluctuate based on factors like metal prices, demand, and the state of the coin market. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more content on coins, collectibles, and other fascinating topics. And if you have any 1985 pennies or other coins in your collection, let us know in the comments below. We're diving into the fascinating world of numismatics and discussing the value and history of the 1987 Abraham Lincoln 1-cent penny coin. If you're a coin collector or just someone who's curious about the world of rare coins, you're in the right place. We're going to explore the history of this iconic coin, its current market value, and why it might be worth a lot more than you think. So, let's jump right in. First, let's talk about the history of the 1-cent penny, specifically the Abraham Lincoln design. The Lincoln penny was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 16th President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln. It was designed by sculptor Victor David Brenner, and the coin featured a portrait of Lincoln on the obverse, with the words "In God We Trust, Liberty," and the date of minting. The reverse of the coin originally depicted 2 wheat stalks, which is why it's sometimes referred to as the wheat penny. However, in 1959, to mark Lincoln's 150th birthday, the design was changed, and the reverse was replaced with the Lincoln Memorial. This design remained in use until 2009 when the U.S. Mint issued a series of commemorative reverse designs to celebrate the bicentennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth. Now, fast forward to 1987. This year is significant in the world of pennies because it marks one of the many years that the U.S. Mint produced Lincoln pennies, with the D Mint mark indicating that the coin was struck at the Denver Mint. The 1987 D penny, like many other pennies produced in the 1980s, was made from a copper-plated zinc composition. You might be wondering, is the 1987 D penny worth anything special? After all, it's not a rare year in terms of low mintage. In fact, the 1987 D penny was produced in large quantities, with over 9 billion of these coins being minted that year. However, the value of any coin is influenced by several factors. While most 1987 D pennies are worth only 1 cent, there are still certain aspects that can make this particular coin valuable to collectors. The first factor to consider is the condition of the coin. Most 1987 D pennies in circulation today are not in pristine condition, and coins that are worn or damaged tend to have little to no value beyond face value. However, if you have a 1987 D penny that's in uncirculated condition, or one that has been well preserved, its value could be higher than you might expect. Uncirculated coins are those that have never been used in commerce and show no signs of wear. A 1987 D penny in mint state could be worth anywhere from 10 to 25 cents depending on its grade. The higher the grade, the more valuable the coin is. In addition to condition, the presence of any errors can significantly increase the value of the coin. Errors are mistakes that occur during the minting process, and they can make a coin highly sought after by collectors. For example, a 1987 D penny with a double die or other minting error could be worth a lot more than its regular counterpart. Double die errors occur when the design is stamped onto the coin more than once, creating a noticeable doubling effect in the lettering or images on the coin. Collectors are often on the lookout for these types of errors, and if you happen to find one in your collection, it could fetch a higher price at auction.so. What is the current market value of the 1987 D penny? As mentioned earlier, the vast majority of these coins are only worth their face value of 1 cent. However, as a collector's item, some well-preserved examples, especially those that are uncirculated, can be worth anywhere from 10 to 25 cents. If you happen to find a 1987 D penny with an error or if it's in mint condition, its value could be significantly higher. In rare cases, an error coin could even be worth several dollars, depending on the severity of the mistake and the demand for that particular error. It's also important to note that the value of coins fluctuates over time. While the 1987 D penny may not be worth a fortune today, the market for coins can change, and prices can rise or fall based on collector demand, the overall economy, and other factors. So, what should you do if you think you have a valuable 1987 D penny? First, you should examine the coin closely. Look for signs of wear or damage, and check for any potential errors. If the coin appears to be in excellent condition or if you believe it may be an error coin, you may want to have it professionally graded. A professional grading service will assess the coin's condition and assign it a grade based on factors such as its appearance, sharpness of design, and overall preservation. Once graded, the coin will have a more accurate value, which can be helpful if you plan to sell or trade it. Another way to determine the value of your 1987 D penny is to check online auction sites, coin dealers, and coin shows. Prices can vary depending on the buyer and the condition of the coin, so it's worth researching the current market trends. In conclusion, while the 1987 D Abraham Lincoln 1-cent penny may not be worth a lot of money in most cases, it can still hold some value to collectors, especially if it's in excellent condition or has an error. So, if you've got a few 1987 D pennies lying around, it might be worth taking a closer look at them to see if you've stumbled upon a hidden gem. Who knows? You might just have a rare coin on your hands. We're going to explore an iconic piece of American currency, the 2001 1-cent penny, also known as the Lincoln penny. This little coin is rich in history, has a special place in the hearts of collectors, and is still circulating in the US today. If you found a 2001 Lincoln penny in your pocket change, you might be wondering about its value and significance. Is it worth anything beyond its face value of 1 cent? Let's take a deep dive into its history, its design, and what it could be worth today. First, let's talk about the history behind the Lincoln 1-cent coin. The Lincoln penny was first introduced in 1909, celebrating the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. The coin was designed by Victor David Brenner, who created the famous portrait of Lincoln that remains on the penny to this day. Over the years, the penny has undergone a few design changes, but the image of President Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, has remained largely unchanged. Now, moving to the specific year in question, the 2001 1-cent penny. This year's penny is part of the series of coins issued during the period when the U.S. Mint was making the standard Lincoln cent, which, at the time, was still part of a long-running design. The 2001 penny has a simple but classic design, featuring Abraham Lincoln's portrait on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, a design that has been used for many years before the coin underwent a redesign in 2010. But let's address the question that might be on your mind. What is the value of a 2001 penny? Well, in terms of its face value, it's still just 1 cent or $0.01. But let's be honest. Most people want to know if there's more to a coin than its face value. With that in mind, let's explore whether or not the 2001 Lincoln penny holds any additional value in the collector's market. To start, we need to talk about the general condition of the coin. Like most coins, a 2001 penny can vary in value depending on its grade, which is a measure of its condition. Most 2001 pennies you'll come across in circulation will be in circulated condition, meaning they've been used as currency and may have some wear and tear. In this condition, a 2001 penny is usually worth no more than its face value, just 1 cent. However, if you happen to have a 2001 penny in excellent condition, say one that's uncirculated or has been carefully preserved, it could be worth a little more than a single cent. Uncirculated 2001 pennies can sometimes sell for around 5 to 10 cents, depending on the market and demand. In rare cases, where a coin has been graded as MS65 or higher, which is a high grade for a penny, it could fetch a higher price from collectors. Keep in mind, though, these premiums are still quite modest compared to coins that are truly rare or historically significant. Let's shift gears and talk about one important aspect of coin collecting: the minting process. In 2001, the U.S. Mint produced the 2001 Lincoln Pennies at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints. Pennies from both mints are very common and, in most cases, will not add much to the value. However, if you happen to have a 2001 penny with a specific mint mark, like a D for Denver or a P for Philadelphia, it could have some significance to collectors who focus on mint mark varieties. Now, there's another important factor to consider when determining the value of a coin: its rarity. The 2001 Lincoln Penny is not a rare coin by any stretch of the imagination. The U.S. Mint produced billions of these pennies in 2001, and most of them have been circulating in the economy for years. The sheer volume of production means that it's highly unlikely that any 2001 Lincoln Penny will ever become an ultra-rare or highly valuable coin. But here's where things get interesting. While the 2001 penny itself may not be rare, there are a few known variations that could be of interest to collectors. One example is the 2001 Close AM variety. The 2001 penny was minted with two different types of reverse designs: the Wide AM and the Close AM. The Wide AM variety is more common, while the Close AM variety, where the letters A and M in America are closer together, is considered rarer. If you happen to find a 2001 penny with this Close AM reverse, it could be worth more to collectors, sometimes even several dollars, depending on the condition and demand. To sum up, most 2001 Lincoln pennies will only be worth their face value, but there are exceptions. If you happen to find a 2001 penny in excellent condition, or if you're lucky enough to find a Close AM variety, you could see a modest increase in its value. But it's important to remember that the 2001 penny is not a highly rare or valuable coin in general. Most collectors will not be looking to pay much more than a few cents for this coin. So, is your 2001 Lincoln penny worth a lot of money? In most cases, no. But if you've been saving your pennies and you happen to come across an uncirculated one or a Close AM variety, you might just have a little treasure on your hands. For the most part, however, the 2001 penny is a reminder of the rich history of the Lincoln cent, a coin that has been a part of American life for over a century. Now, if you're a dedicated coin collector, it's always a good idea to keep an eye on the market and check out reputable dealers or auction sites to see if there are any significant price fluctuations. The world of coin collecting is fascinating, and you never know when a common coin might unexpectedly skyrocket in value. Keep your eyes open, continue learning, and who knows, you might just uncover a hidden gem in your change jar. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more content on rare coins, numismatics, and other fascinating topics in the world of money and history.